Australia may have won the first test against the West Indies by 10 wickets. It continued their dominance at home, and it also ensured that they stay on top of the ICC WTC rankings at this point in time. But Cricket Australia, and if you have to look at the way how Test cricket is being scheduled this season around in Australia, there is a lot of criticism. There is a big criticism in the way how Cricket Australia has shoddily managed the Test schedule this time around, because during the Australia versus West Indies Test match, this sight was very common. Adelaide, the first Test match where it was held, you saw crowds which were very, very low. Across the four days that this Test match lasted, on day 4, when only 100 minutes of play were possible, 17,000 turned up. Across the 4 days, 65,000 plus came in Adelaide. But this Adelaide Test match was not a pink ball test. And if you generally look at the scheduling of Australian cricket in the past, this season it has been somewhat of a big takeaway from it, because normally when you associate the venues in Australia, Brisbane is your series opener. Melbourne, Sydney are your Boxing Day and New Year Test match venues. Perth is always the second test or the third test. Adelaide is always associated with the pink ball test match. But in this particular season, Australia are going to host the pink ball test against the West Indies only at the Gabba. So there has been a complete role reversal as to what has happened. Because even during COVID, the schedule was not tampered. Why did Cricket Australia tamper with the schedule this time around? Because if you look at it, the season opener for Australia was at Optus, the Perth Stadium. There, your capacity was high, crowds were poor. Just fathom this. Adelaide had empty stands versus the West Indies. 67,050 crowd across the 4 days versus the West Indies, which shockingly was much better than the Australia versus Pakistan Test match at Perth. Now that is something that you have to really think about. Then no pink ball test for Adelaide this summer. The next pink ball test that Adelaide is going to host is the Border Gavaskar Trophy, India versus Australia. 2024 to 2025, in that season, India will play Australia in the pink ball test at Adelaide, because more crowds. And look at the scheduling. The scheduling of this test was also criticized because it started bang in the middle of a working day, Wednesday, and that too because for 7 years you had gotten accustomed, barring 1 year, you had gotten accustomed to teams starting their test match somewhere around 1:30, and then after that the teams would come and night time you would play the test match. Now suddenly in the AM, that too in the middle of the week, they said no, organize this test match, and it was a red ball test match. No weekend schedule. Now they have been accused of not respecting the pink ball test match. Because remember, only one pink ball test is going to be held, but that will be in Brisbane. Now consider 2021, when COVID, the second wave of COVID was just wreaking havoc. But at that time, the restrictions had eased off at that time. There was a pink ball test in Adelaide. Yes, in the India series, what happened, the season opener had to begin in Adelaide because of the tough COVID restrictions that were there in Queensland. No test match could be organized in Western Australia because of the tough COVID protocols there. So, South Australia Cricket Association have reiterated the demand that yes, let the Adelaide Test only be in mid-December. There are some very funny rumors going around that they did not want to host the pink ball test in December because the heat in Adelaide would be too much. That is really a big thing if you have to look at it. This time around, Queensland is hosting it because they have to get one pink ball test in. So, that is why if you look at how the situation has panned out, many people will say, oh, it's Australia, oh, it's Australia versus Pakistan, it's Australia versus West Indies. Pakistan and West Indies are not high quality teams. That is the only argument that the fans will peddle at this point in time. But remember, it is not Pakistan's fault, it is not the West Indies' fault that they are anyway on the outer fringes of Test cricket. Because remember, the big three model, Australia, England, India, they will want to play amongst themselves because that's where high revenue is generated. But remember, an Indian team will also be without stars in the near future. An Australian team will also be without stars. England will also be without stars. What do you do then? Cricket is a great leveler in that kind of a sense, and that's why you will have to blame Australia to a certain extent that you're not respecting the tradition. Sure, I understand in the next couple of years, Brisbane might not be able to host the season opener because it's getting ready for the 2032 Olympics that will be held in there. But Australia's summer for the past decades has been season opener in Brisbane, second test in Adelaide, third test in Perth, Boxing Day and New Year's test in Melbourne and Sydney. Why would you want to tamper with that? Why would you want to disrespect the pink ball test when it is actually keeping test cricket alive? Proper scheduling, proper organization is the key to ensuring that test cricket survives. Australia luckily has only 5 or 6 venues by which you can organize tests, and each test has a novelty. It's not like India, it's not like England where there are too many venues. At least in Australia, they can at least have that organized novelty of a test match. But they seem to have squandered it in this summer. Pakistan tests, barring the one that was there in Melbourne, they were hardly exciting. Pakistan themselves are to blame for it. West Indies, you know that the West Indies are not like the old West Indies. But at least with the pink ball test, they could have at least had more crowds. That didn't happen. And scheduling it on a Wednesday, and today the test match ended, which was a Friday, just didn't make sense. Tuesday to Wednesday, that's it. Middle of the week. Cricket Australia need to be really sharp. If they don't organize proper schedules, then their test cricket will also be dying in a very, very short while. And you need test cricket to survive thanks to the likes of Australia, India and England. England through their baseball play, Australia because they have always been good, India because they are the powerful supergiants that are there. Thank you so much folks for joining us for this live. We'll be back with more updates on sports today. Tap that bell icon so you know when we go live. And don't forget we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram as well. Bye-bye.